So you told me that you work out. What's your favorite exercise?
My favorite exercise, eating.
Oh my gosh, this is why I think you and I connected so well together, because that is exactly my favorite thing to do too.
To eat, yeah. I'm a big
You,
fan, but I mean, I don't know. Some days I like cardio, and some days I like lifting better. I mean, lifting certainly has changed quite a bit from back in the day when I was a young one.
oh yeah, no, I hear you on that. So, well, are you ready for the Mike is Listening show, sir? Are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's kick it off.
The mic is listening.
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 The mic is listening. The mic is listening.
The mic is listening.
The mic is listening.
The mic is listening.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is the Mike is Listening show. My name is Syya, and we are back for another great episode this week to talk about authenticity, but also just talk about business storytelling in general. And so I will be introducing our guest, Mr. Christoph Trappe, in just a minute here. But I thought I'd try something different today and talk a little bit about podcasting in the news. There are two different things that happened in the last week or so that I thought we should talk about because it's so exciting. The first thing off is, if you guys are familiar with the website builder Kajabi, they have announced that they are integrating podcasting as a certain additional service and tool into their web hosting platform. So for those that are looking to launch their podcast and are currently using Kajabi and trying to integrate in a way that makes it a heck of a lot easier to share your content, Kajabi's got a platform to do it. Now, I personally have not checked it out specifically yet, so I would love to hear your opinions for those that are on the Kajabi platform or those that know about it. Is it good? Is it bad? What needs to be improved? Come on, podcasters. We know what we need, and it's really exciting to see that Kajabi's on board and allowing us to embed our podcast and content a lot more easier. The other thing, too, is for those that are having their podcast or looking to podcast, there is a way we distribute over our feed. A reminder, podcast is typically an audio format. There are other mediums that leverage podcast content, which would be like video streaming, live streaming, of which I'm doing. But Pocket Cast is a directory, it's a catcher, and it takes the RSS feeds, let's say from Apple podcast, for example, and they take your content and they also help cross distribute your podcast. So a lot of great news on here because Pocket Cast just got acquired by Automatic, which is owned by WordPress. So you're sensing a theme here, guys, because WordPress is also a website builder. And so they are, it sounds like to me, they're playing into the podcast hosting, distributing game as well. What does that mean for us from the podcast perspective? It means our lives are going to be a lot easier to push our content out, to integrate it with our existing brand websites that we currently have, WordPress, Kajabi, for example. So all huge for us in the podcast community. We're getting listened to. They're making life easier for us. So stay tuned for more information on that. That's pretty much all I wanted to say is I'm so excited. All ships rise with the tide, everyone. You know I keep saying that. And yay for us podcasters. People are actually listening. So on that note, I do want to invite a person that I have been kind of stalking over the internet and LinkedIn specifically over time. Christoph Trappe, welcome to the Mike is Listening show, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always great to connect with some of my favorite stalkers. I don't call it stalking. It's just we're connecting, right? We're just staying connected. That's all.
I love stalking. You know why? It sets people off like, wait a minute, what are they going to say next? It's that uneasiness that sometimes, maybe it's because I love that thrill of what's going to come out of my mouth next. So, Christoph, I know we've communicated over LinkedIn. So I hope I don't scare you too much today, but I do appreciate you joining.
Yeah, well, not yet, but let's see how it goes. And of course, as we know, there's a tweet for every occasion, right? So let's see what you dug up. Looking forward to it.
So look, I'll be gentle. Usually the first time out, I'm usually nothing but supportive and a huge advocate to make you as good looking. And obviously you're already good looking enough as it is. I'm just talking about put you in the best light. It's usually a second go around where I really dig in when the banter really gets going. And quite frankly, it's when I get put in my place pretty solidly. So if you want to do it now and preempt all that, you're welcome to. I'm used to it.
No, just keep the compliments going. I'm all ready to go.
So I've been watching you live stream on LinkedIn, and I have to say, I've seen so many great folks share their knowledge, edutainment, educate those that choose to promote themselves, leveraging the live stream content on LinkedIn. Can I ask you, what turned you on to decide to put yourself on live stream on LinkedIn? Because you have to apply for it. So what was going on in your head?
Yeah, you have to apply for it. Well, I didn't really start with LinkedIn as my first stop as I was thinking about it, but I launched a podcast a few years ago, and then of course I live streamed many years ago. Think Periscope, Meerkat, Blab, all those different networks. And when I did my podcast, and now everybody wants to do podcasts, all these companies. And the way to really get the most out of your podcast is to live stream it. So, Jason Falls, he had the Jason Falls show at the time, and he was live streaming that. And I thought I should try that. And it's been nothing but great. I mean, honestly, I stream all of my shows to Amazon, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. I am thinking about Twitch again, because Twitch, you can live stream to Amazon Music, which I'm not an artist, so I might not qualify. I don't know. But, it's just, you can reach so many more people. And, when companies launch a podcast, it makes no sense to me. And then they go, oh, we had 20 downloads. Why is it so low? Well, it's so low because you got a small audience, because it's a new network, you don't know anybody there yet. Just live stream it to all those networks that you spend years building. It's a fantastic strategy for any podcaster. Here's the other thing. Yes, you can the podcast after you're live, but why? Like, why? It was already live. You had way more people listening on live stream than the podcast. So who cares? And it makes people more authentic. It makes people real. They're not going to say stuff that they expect to be edited out because we're live. It doesn't work, right? So
Right.
For all those reasons, I mean, I'm a big fan. I think the live streaming of podcasts is a fantastic strategy.
I absolutely have to agree with you on that. There is a certain amount of, you can't be inauthentic when you're live streaming, right? Because you are what you are. And that's something that I think has always appealed to me is maybe it's my lack of maturity, which I know I've got the maturity of a 12-year-old. I don't know how else not to be. I don't, even in my corporate life, when I worked in, tech sales back in the day, I would be in these meetings with CXO suite, the C-suite, and I just couldn't sit there super prim and proper. If I got excited or passionate about something that we were talking about, I was letting it go. I was just, I gesticulate a lot, right? So that is something that I've always found fascinating, is that I notice that if you are recorded, there seems to be some temperance, I guess, of, wait, I can pause, stop, recut, and then start over again. I think there's that false sense of security, I think, in a way, if you want to change it up, for, I guess, a lack of a better term. Have you ever thought to yourself, have you ever had a guest where they just weren't engaging with you in that live stream? How have you overcome that, where they're just kind of bland?
Yeah, well, it happens. And I just listened, I think it was the Pontification podcast the other day. And they talk about how somebody does a podcast, and I don't remember who it was, and they cut 1/5 of their episodes. So after, 1 out of 5 or whatever it is, they don't even publish those episodes because the guest wasn't engaging, whatever it might be. And I don't know if I like that strategy or not, because here's the thing, right? Yes, I made time to come on your show. You made time to have me on your show. But at the end of the day, it is also a two-way street, right? So if somebody makes the time to be on somebody's show, you're just not going to publish it. I don't know. It doesn't feel right either if you think about it, especially if you put some time in. But on the other side, my shows are now 27 minutes. And the reason is because they also get published on the DBNA television network, and that's a 27-minute time slot. And very rarely is it hard to fill those 27 minutes. Very rarely, because
Right.
If I have 4 questions, I mean, we can't go super deep on any of them, right? We kind of dive in, and then it's like time to move on to the next question. So just for that new time limit, and I've had that maybe for like 12 episodes now, something like that. It actually makes it easier, and people realize it's not a lot of time, so they try to get out what they want to get out, and then before you know it, you're at the end. So, but it does happen. Some people, they're just what did you have for breakfast this morning, Christoph? Coffee. And
We talked about that.
Like,
yeah.
now you have to talk.
Oh yeah, or it turns into a bit of a, and maybe this is something I actually talked about in another podcast, literally yesterday with another show, which is, I begged, my parting thought was, if you're going to be a guest on a podcast, please be a giving guest. Meaning, even if you know the host is struggling, try to help them along, as opposed to just sit there stoically and just stare at them, and expect them to carry the weight, if that makes sense.
Just have a conversation. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what would you do if you're in real life, sitting in a coffee shop? And I think this is the biggest thing people need to remember. We are just having a conversation. Just be real. It's a little different, right? Because you are actually down there. Like, if I'm looking at you correctly, I'm looking a little bit different than having a real life conversation. I get it, but just have a conversation. Just be real. Just share stories. Don't be so, oh, I'm here, I'm the interviewer, I'm not allowed to ask any questions. Well,
Look, I think I hear you on that, because I think I asked you in the very beginning, I'm like, is there anything that's off the table that I should be aware of? Right. In general, I think 90% of people say, yeah, everything's kosher. Like, just ask me whatever. The only times I've ever had someone say, I don't want to talk about X, is usually if they're speaking outside their corporate entity. So don't mention their company. Or B, they just got out of jail and they're like, yeah, I can't really talk about that case just yet, So, or going into jail, I don't know. But that's usually the only time I've ever seen anyone that's really said, no, don't talk about something. So let's talk about this, because you have the business storytelling podcast, but your website itself, that's how I kind of got to learn more about you, is called the Authentic Storytelling Project, because it's not just a podcast that you're doing. You actually have a page that's got so much more content to it. And did it start off as a blog?
Yeah, it did. It's been around for, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years, something like that. And, if I had to go back today, I probably would just make it ChristophTrappe.com, which I have. And I was going to move it over one of these days. And I had a contract with a company, for a project, and they wanted it there. So I just put it on the back burner, didn't do it. But so that's something to think about. Where do you put your content? That's where it started. Probably should have put it on ChristophTrappe.com. Would have been a little bit easier, because, now I got the business storytelling podcast, which is not called the Authentic Storytelling Podcast. So it evolves, but, you got these different pieces. But at the end of the day, the concept of authentic storytelling still applies. Tell better stories, be real, be helpful, share what makes a difference, and kind of go from there. And that's, I think, that's all the stuff I talk about. I think it's more and more important for companies to do, because you can check them out easily, right? People leave. Be real, unless you're a jerk, don't be a jerk, but, share your story.
So I have to say, I was listening to the one episode, I believe, I am going to apologize here if I say the name incorrectly, Junaid Ahmed. Is it Junaid Ahmed? And you guys were talking about gear and hardware, which it is, to me, as a podcast producer, it always interests me to hear what other equipment and software people are using to create their own content. But I thought it was interesting that you guys were talking about how you guys came about in your own path, as far as the mistakes you've made and that one conversation about the ring lights and glasses resonates with me because I actually wear glasses in my normal life, but because I'm nearsighted, I don't need it for this particular purpose. You said, or I think was it Junaid that said lighting for him was the most key thing. If you're going to create some content, get your lighting down right. Do you agree with that? Because I think you guys were kind of talking about it, but I think you kind of let it slide a little bit. Do you really agree that lighting should be the first thing versus audio or the camera?
I let it slide. I don't know. Maybe I was changing something on my editing platform, but I think they all matter. But really, when you first start, I think audio is probably more important, honestly, because if people can't hear you, they're not going to keep listening, right? Especially today. I also think lighting is important. I'll give you an example. So right here, I have a ring light on the top. So see, there's no reflection because it's up high enough, right? But it lights up my beautiful hair. But see, when I look up, like there, now you can see it. So that's how high it is. And then see, now you can see it in my, so I'll never look up that way ever. Like there's no reason to, honestly.
Right.
And then there's another 2 lights behind me. And one of them actually lights up this backdrop behind me. And then the other one lights up the entire room. That one is really more for me than the live stream, just because it's a little lighter. But you need to probably start with audio, right? You have to have your audio. It needs to work. People need to be able to hear it, especially if you use it as a podcast. And here's the thing. When it comes to podcasts, the competition is going to get even fiercer out there, right? So if you think your 20 downloads right now are bad, wait until everybody else in your niche, in your vertical is doing a podcast. You're going to have to step it up somehow. And audio is simple enough. I mean, you can hear me. I sound okay, right?
Yeah. Sound great.
I mean, I got a mic right in front of me right here. It's not even right in my face. In fact, what I learned, I used to pull it in. And on Amazon, I still pull it in because I like people to see it, right? So they might buy it, right? You have the link. But here, it doesn't make any difference. So it's literally in the same spot all day. And it just, it works. And the mic I have, I think $80 maybe. It's available sometimes for $50. So you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on one piece of equipment. But I think as you're growing, you want to make sure you get the right equipment and you sound in good sound and look as good as you can.
I absolutely agree with that. When I was listening to that conversation, I was laughing because so many times in the very beginning when I consult with clients about how they want to go about launching a podcast, there are some that just don't have the budget for it, right? Sometimes they're just kind of, lead a horse to water. If they can do and start off a few episodes, then they'll get the funding from the powers that be to see, hey, let's a pilot episode, if you will. And I get it. You don't need to drop tons of money initially, but do understand from a personal branding or corporate branding perspective, it does reflect if you have poor equipment over time. Now, unless that's the vibe of your show, right? Where you're meant to be out and about on the streets and you're meant to be spontaneous. That's a totally different type of, energy, if you will, and type of content that you're putting out there. But I find most corporate or branded podcasts tend to be a bit more professionally oriented in the context of, again, like this conversation that we're having right here. It's more face-to-face. So, okay.
It's true.
Go ahead. You make it sound and look so easy, Christoph. So let me ask you this. What's the one big mistake you did when you first started doing this?
Well, big mistake. That's always, what's the definition of big? I made so many mistakes on all these different shows, you lose a guest along the way. Somebody's audio isn't working. Here's, one mistake I just made the other day. There's technically 3 Wi-Fi networks in this house, right? Because I got like extenders and there's 5G in some parts, whatever. And I need to be on the Wi-Fi that's right next to me, literally. So when StreamYard tells you should plug in, I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't even know how to plug anything in anywhere, right? There's Wi-Fi in this house. I don't know. I don't even have any cables to plug anything in. So anyway, no offense to StreamYard. Other people tell me that too. Plug in. I don't know how to do it. So I got a Wi-Fi extender right next to me, but sometimes I forget to connect my iPad to that extender. So when I do that, what happens is that's where I mix the show together on my iPad. the connection is bad because it's connected to 5G, which works well if I'm sitting in front of the TV, but doesn't work as well when I'm down here. So once you're live, you can't fix it,
Oh, yeah.
So now you're stuck. You have to start anew, or you have to, you just, you roll with it. So it's just something to keep in mind, like whatever, like you just roll with it, right? Something happens, you try to remember the next time. I don't know what other mistakes I've made. I mean, all kinds of things have gone wrong over the last couple of years when it comes to live streaming. I don't think I've ever had any really awkward conversations where I think I had one time before I went live, somebody wanted to cut something out because they didn't want to have it on air. But yeah, I think those are some of those things, and stuff will happen. Like, just get over it. Like, just roll with it. What's your backup plan? What are you going to do next? And go from there. It's really not a big deal.
It's so funny because when you're on live stream, you feel like, oh my God, that camera is staring at me, and anyone that's watching me right now is going to judge me poorly for whatever reason. Yeah. I mean, it does crack me up because that is the joy of live. That's why I think there was, and I apologize, I'm going to cough again. Like this, for example. Oh my gosh, my throat started itching. Power to the broadcasters that can talk through when they need to have a coughing fit. But that's the joy of do you remember back in the 60s where there'd be live TV and all the variety? Like, wasn't Carol Burnett live? And maybe I might have slightly dated myself.
I don't remember. I am old, but not that old.
Well, okay. I'm not that old either, but I do reference things because I love Carol Burnett, and I've absolutely been obsessed just seeing how that ensemble made things look so effortless, and when they would break character all the time, from the producer and the director are like, no, but at the same time, it was also part of their knit or kitsch, right? Was that how often could they break character with each other to finish a segment? But that tells you, at least even from a TV production perspective, that SHIT happens, right? So why should we expect us as individual content creators should have some perfectly run, no errors, no snafu live stream issues? And so I am begging and imploring, give yourself grace, people.
I mean, and think about it. Having to cough, that's not an error. Like, having to think about an answer, that's not an error. I mean, it's like, that's just life. You know what I mean? Like, my kid walking in and, who cares? Like, it's life. What's the big deal? Just move forward, be real.
Again, going back to authenticity. So let me ask you this, because you titled it the Authenticity Storytelling Project, and then you switched over to the Business Storytelling Project. Why move away from authenticity, and why focus on the business?
It's not a storytelling podcast, and on TV it's called the Business Storytelling Show. So they're all related, but people, but I mean, it's all related. It's just, what are people doing? Are they telling business stories? Are they, what is it? And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I think a lot of business people don't necessarily relate to authentic storytelling on its own. They relate to it, as part of what they're trying to do, but they don't say, oh, I need to tell better authentic stories. What they're really trying to do is they try to tell better stories to drive some kind of results, right? So you have to kind of figure out what's the right terminology. So they all kind of go hand in hand. It's not like I make the move away from it, but that's kind of how they fit together.
Okay, but let's talk about the word authenticity, because I've used this and I've seen people use this consistently, and I'm going to hammer on it a little bit because I consult for a lot of business tech organizations. Yeah. And when I beg them, please, what is your why? Why are you doing this? What is it about you that makes you unique, right? I feel like at times business entities don't fully understand what to be authentic means. In a lot of ways, they feel like push their brand, as in push their product or push their service, but not exactly what they are and who they are and what they represent. So if you could talk to an entity right now and say, look, if you want to be authentic, you should do X, or how you should look at yourself as Y. do you make those suggestions at all? Or do you see how they could possibly look at being authentic a different way?
Well, I mean, the whole discussion about what's your why is always interesting, right? Because there's a lot of companies out there that they didn't start to do something bigger, right? They started to find a way to make money, which that's okay to do. I'm not opposed to making money either, honestly. But you have to find a better story than just we want to make money, right? And
Right.
especially if you are in an industry, and I don't know who isn't in a easily. You have to stay in front of people. You have to find a better story. I'll give you an example. I won't tell any names, but there is actually a platform out there that I've used before, maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, or I knew about them maybe 10 years ago. And then I used them for a short time 8 years ago. And they're always in front of people. They're top of mind when I need that platform. Unfortunately, their platform really sucked, So when I dove in, their good marketing and their good story didn't help me, but they were always top of mind, without always telling me about the features and the benefits and all that. And there's a time to do that. But what's conversation can your company participate in? What can you do? And do that. I mean, do a podcast, just talk about related topics, write some interesting articles. And I think companies are struggling with that because years ago, you would just talk about, here, work with us, we're the best, and prove us wrong. Nobody could, right? But today people
Right.
can prove you wrong. I'll give you an example. But at one point, it felt like they were, almost scamming us out of some money so basically what happened is they were renting kayaks at 4:30 for an hour, but the shop closed at 5 o'clock, but they were very willing to take my money for an hour without saying we're going to close in 30. So guess what? It's not my responsibility as a customer. Well, you know what? First of all, I got the money back from my credit card. Second of all, I wrote a review. And you know what? People look at the reviews. I mean, that review alone had hundreds and hundreds of views already on Google. So my point is, if you do it, people can share what they know and people can share their opinions and thoughts. So the more you can get that story aligned with what you're actually trying to do, what you're good at, and, expand it from just your benefits and features, I think it's very helpful for companies.
You know what? That you just nailed it on head. And I just wanted to wrap you up in a little box and just take you with me as I talk to my clients as well. So thank you, Christoph. And I really appreciate your time on here. So for those that want to get to know you, want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm easy to find, Christoph Trappe. You can literally just Google it, LinkedIn. Please connect. Please let me know you heard me on the show. Don't send me a message, Christoph. It looks like you're human. I'm human too. Let's connect. I hate those messages, but feel free to connect. Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, check out the podcast, the Business Storytelling Podcast. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts, all the different channels. Currently, Amazon Music is actually starting to become my favorite app. We'll see if it stays there. I go back and forth, Spotify, Google Podcast, and now Amazon Music, but it seems to change.
Well, it does, doesn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update my show notes on there. I have all information on the links for you. Christoph Trappe, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure now that I've actually got to talk to you in person versus us over email. It is awesome to get to know you. And I definitely look forward to getting to learn more from you. And by the way, I love your live streams because it does feel like a masterclass. So anyone, please hit it up. On that note, I think what we're going to do here is next week, we are very excited to welcome Megan Jacot. She's a cybersecurity BA, meaning bad ASS. I love her to death. She's with the Cyber Future Foundation as a consulting engineer, and I cannot wait to talk to her. Obviously, for those that know my background in security, I'm probably going to be way more spasmodic than I am right now. So Christoph got lucky a little bit. I'm a little bit more subdued than normal. It's a joke.
Perfect stalker yet.
Favorite stalker. I know. Well, I'm going to have a hard time stalking Megan. Let me tell you, my friend, I've tried already. I'm going to fail profusely. But on that note, everyone, have a great week. We'll see you next week. And the mic is listening. Be sure to check out Christoph Trappe, guys. Thanks.